know really has come from remarks and statements by Afghan President Ghani rather than our own leaders. And I'm very concerned that the American people cannot make good decisions about our continued investment in this 16-year conflict when they are not told the full extent of our commitment and the number of service members we are sending. Do I have your commitment to be honest with the American people about the numbers of troops we are sending over and what their missions will be?
No, ma'am. If it involves telling the enemy something that will help them, yes, ma'am. Yes, Senator, in any terms of honesty with this committee in private at any time, in closed hearing, we will get as specific as you wish, no reservations at all in private. In talking with the American people, we will tell them we are adding the troops. We'll give approximate numbers. We're not hiding this, but I'd rather not say the specific capabilities or the specific numbers or the location on a battlefield they're going out of the confidentiality we do our troops.
I didn't ask you about any of those details. I asked you about the troop numbers and our mission.
We will keep this committee fully informed as we have in closed hearings, right down to specifics of troop numbers. I think it's better in public we stay in general terms. We have said it's over 3,000, so it's not that we're hiding the trend that we're going in, but I think the specifics are best shared with you alone.
General Dunford.
Yeah, I'd associate myself with the comments of the Secretary, Senator Gillibrand. Thanks.
Thank you. I'd now like to talk about the Iran deal. In his address to the UN General Assembly, President Trump said that the Iran deal was one of the worst and most one-sided transactions the United States has ever entered into. It's no secret that the administration is considering not recertifying to Congress on October 15th, despite this administration twice certifying that Iran is in compliance with the agreement and the IAEA having reported 8 times that Iran is in compliance. In fact, General Dunford, in your recent renomination hearing, you responded to a question about the administration's possible intention to walk away from the Iran nuclear agreement by saying that it, quote, would have an impact on others' willingness to sign agreements. The other parties to the agreement may have it clear that they believe Iran is in compliance and that they would not support efforts to renegotiate the agreement. This includes our closest European allies, such as the UK, France, and Germany, as well as countries we need to work with on other areas of conflict, Russia and China. One of the reasons why I supported the JCPOA was because I believed that the terms of agreement gave us much greater transparency. We would know where their mines are, their mills, their all of their production capabilities and sourcing. And so I thought that intelligence was very important, and both our military leaders at the time and our intelligence leaders at the time said that that was so. My view is without this agreement, we will lose that transparency. What is your view on that assessment, General Dunford?
Senator, the agreement right now, what I testified to last week was that Iran is not in material breach of the agreement, and I do believe the agreement to date has delayed the development of a nuclear capability by Iran.
How might either the premature end of this agreement or U.S. unilateral withdrawal impact our insight into Iran's activities, Secretary Mattis?
I didn't hear that, Senator.
How would either a premature ending of the agreement or a U.S. unilateral withdrawal impact our insight into Iran's activities?
Senator, as I understand it right now, and I've been dealing with the President and the Secretary of State on this, it is right now being considered in terms of the security of the United States. By it, I mean we're talking about the law that is passed up here where we have to certify plus the agreement. These are two separate. You can talk about the conditions under one of those and not walk away from the other one of those, if you see what I'm driving at. They're two different pieces, and that is under consideration right now about how we deal both the legal requirement from the Congress as well as the international agreement.
General Dunford, you said that we should focus leveraging our partners that were part of the agreement to deal with those challenges that we know Iran possesses, whether it, the terrorist threat or the maritime threat, and so forth. Secretary Mattis, do you agree with that assessment by General Dunford?
In general terms, I do. The amount of misconduct, I would call it, internationally, whether it be with ballistic missiles, rhetoric, support to terrorists, threats to our friends, Arab and Israel in the region by Iran, are areas where they are open to a great deal, I think, of censure by the international community. And we are not naive about their agreement on the nuclear issue, and we are being very alert to any cheating on that right now.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
On behalf of Chairman McCain, Senator Wicker, please.
Thank you, Senator Reid. General Dunford, we've heard it said that America is losing the war in Afghanistan. Is that true?
Senator, what we've said is we're not winning, and it's at a stalemate. And that's my assessment of where we are right now. Is we're not at a point where we can bring a successful political solution to the war.
If the American leadership, including people in this room, including the Pentagon and the executive branch, if we decide to win this conflict in Afghanistan, is there any reason at all why we shouldn't be able to do so?
At the end of the day, Senator, I think it's going to require the Afghan people to actually develop the peace process that will bring an end to the war. What I believe the United States can do in conjunction with our coalition partners is provide the Afghan government and the Afghan security forces the support they need to bring an end to the war.
And is there any reason why we can't provide that support?
Senator, I don't believe there is any reason why we can't provide that support, and I think the new strategy that we're here to discuss with you here this morning provides the Afghan government and the Afghan security forces with that level of support to bring this to a successful completion.
Okay, and this has been alluded to, and you mentioned the Afghan people. Is there any lack of resolve on the part of the Afghan people, including their hearts and minds, to that would be a stumbling block to us being successful in this new strategy?
I don't believe so, Senator. It's very clear to me from my personal experience as well as recent polling that the Afghan people do, in fact, want a better life for themselves. They do reject the ideas of the Taliban. And from an individual soldier perspective, I think the one thing we can all say is that the Afghan forces have been incredibly resilient and demonstrated the will to fight over the last couple of years under the most extraordinary conditions.
They certainly have always demonstrated a willingness to fight. Are we viewed as an invading force?
Senator, I think anything but an invading force. Consistently, the Afghan people have requested us to be there. Our presence is favorable across the country. Again, in polling, typically somewhere between 70 and 80% of the Afghan people want support of the international community led by the United States. We've made it clear that our objectives are to support an Afghan-led peace process, to support Afghan security forces, bringing security to their country. So I don't think there's very, very few people who would consider us an invading force inside of Afghanistan. The vast majority are very happy that we're there helping them to bring peace and security to their country.
And in regard to the new strategy, the new plan, and the new emphasis on America doing its part to get the job done, how do our troops feel about that, up and down the rank and file, General? Senator,
I think if you speak to any young man and woman who has served inside of Afghanistan, they want to get the mission done. They want to accomplish the mission. We certainly, and Secretary Mattis has just recently come back from Afghanistan last week. All they want to know is what is the mission, and they want to have the wherewithal to accomplish that mission, and that's exactly what we're trying to provide to them.
Well, I'm not at all surprised by your answer. Mr. Secretary, let me just ask you briefly about NATO. You met with Secretary General Stoltenberg recently. NATO allies have made significant contributions. How are we doing with upping the involvement of NATO, and are you satisfied with our progress so far?
I need to get to NATO now that we've got the strategy in hand. Now that Secretary Joe and I have gone to Afghanistan and sit down with my counterparts, I'll do that in November. We are already in contact with them, I believe, from 15 NATO nations or partner nations fighting under NATO's flag, for example, like Australia, Georgia. I believe we will see, at least from 15 nations right now, additional troops put in there. There could be more than that. Those are just the ones I have indications right now that they're going to up their game.
What's their stake in all this?
Sir, if anything, they are even more vulnerable than the United States is in terms of transnational terrorists operating out of Afghanistan against the European continent. So they've got a lot at stake here, but I think all the nations from South Asia, India, certainly China's got a stake in this. Europe does. This is a transnational problem, Senator.
Thank you. Well, let me just tell both of you I appreciate your work, and I, for one, support you, and I just want you to tell us what you need, and we'll try to get it for you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. On behalf of Chairman McCain, Senator King, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Secretary Mattis, very quick, short answer question. Do you believe it's in our national security interest at the present time to remain in the JCPOA? That's a yes or no question.
Yes, Senator, I do.
Thank you. You may have noticed I was talking to Chairman McCain as he was leaving. I'm also on the Intelligence Committee, and I hear varying analyses of the status of Afghanistan from the military and from the civilian intelligence agencies. In September of 1963, President Kennedy sent a famous mission to Vietnam. Victor Krulak and Joseph Mendenhall. Krulak was a Marine general. Mendenhall was with the Foreign Service. They came back and gave wildly different accounts of what was going on in Vietnam. Krulak was very optimistic about the progress. Mendenhall was very pessimistic. Kennedy's famous comment was, "Did you two guys visit the same country?" I believe it would be important and helpful to this committee because the facts are so important when we're talking about American lives and treasure to have a closed briefing. I suggested this to the chairman with DIA, CIA, NSA, all of the intelligence community to get a real status of what's really happening on the ground to be sure that we're in fact that it's winnable, I guess, and that we do have the ability to make progress. As you all know, we've lost the Afghan government has lost 15% of their territory in the last year, and people in Maine say, is this winnable? General Dunford, I know of no one who knows more about Afghanistan than you do. Is it winnable, and what does winning look like?
Senator, if you define winning as making sure we don't have another attack on the homeland from the terrorist organizations that operate in South Asia, and there of the 90 that we recognize, international terrorist groups, 18 to 20 of them operate in South Asia. So if winning includes keeping them from attacking us, we can do that. If winning includes getting the Afghan forces to the point where they can provide security for their country with a minimal amount of international support, we can do that. If winning includes meeting President Ghani's